New Year's Eve in Times Square, chaotic, loud, and exhilarating. My girlfriend Emma and I decided to dive headfirst into the madness and experience the iconic ball drop. We arrived early, bundled up against the winter chill, and staked our claim to a spot in the sea of people eagerly awaiting the countdown. The excitement was off the charts, and the air buzzed with a contagious energy as the crowd swelled, a sea of faces from all walks of life coming together for that one magical moment when the clock struck midnight. We were there to celebrate, to welcome a new year and a new chapter. As the minutes ticked away, we lost ourselves in the lively atmosphere. The neon lights illuminated the square, and the sounds of laughter and music created a symphony of celebration. It was the kind of chaotic beauty that only New York City could conjure. While Emma and I were enjoying ourselves and taking in the sights, I noticed something odd. A man standing on the fringes of the crowd, his eyes fixed on us. At first I dismissed it as a curious onlooker caught up in the spectacle, but as we moved through the crowd, I realized he was keeping pace with us, always lurking in the periphery. Emma, ever the optimist, thought I was being paranoid. "It's Times Square on New Year's Eve, babe. Everyone's looking at everyone." I wanted to believe her, to shake off the uneasy feeling that settled in the pit of my stomach. As the countdown began, the excitement intensified. The crowd joined in unison, chanting the numbers that marked the end of one year and the beginning of another. But amid the cheers and laughter, I felt a chill, a sensation that something wasn't right. When the clock finally struck midnight and the ball dropped, the square erupted in cheers and fireworks. For a moment, the strange man faded from my thoughts. We embraced, shared a kiss, and reveled in the euphoria of the new year. But as we began to disperse from the square, there he was again. His gaze was unnerving, a silent intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Emma finally saw it too, her cheerful expression replaced by a furrowed brow. "We need to lose this guy," I whispered to Emma, guiding her through the crowd. We maneuvered through the sea of people, darting into side streets and alleyways, but no matter where we went, he followed. As we hurried through the labyrinth of Manhattan, the once celebratory atmosphere morphed into a tense cat-and-mouse game. We ducked into shops and coffee houses, but he was always there, lurking in the distance. Fear crept in as we realized the gravity of the situation. Emma clutched my arm, her eyes darting around, scanning for an escape. The bustling city now seemed suffocating, each corner harboring the ominous presence of the persistent stranger. Desperation set in as we decided to make a break for a busy subway station. We sprinted through the darkened streets, hoping the anonymity of the underground would provide sanctuary. But as we descended into the subway, our anxiety remained. The man, undeterred, followed us onto the platform. Panicking, we boarded a train, praying the crowd would offer a shield. Yet, as the doors closed, we saw him on the platform. The train pulled away, but the shadow of fear lingered. We emerged at a different station, convinced we had finally lost him. But the city that had once felt like a vibrant tapestry now seemed a maze of potential threats. We hailed a cab, avoiding eye contact with passers-by, haunted by the unnerving pursuit. It wasn't until the next day that the horror of our New Year's Eve unfolded. The local news painted a grim picture. A human trafficking ring had been dismantled, its members apprehended by law enforcement. And there, on the screen, was the face that had haunted us in Times Square. The man who had trailed us through the crowds. The realization hit like a sledgehammer. Our seemingly ordinary New Year's Eve had taken a dark turn, the festive atmosphere masking the sinister reality that lurked beneath the surface. The man who had followed us was a chief player in exploitation and cruelty. The news detailed the insidious operations of the trafficking ring, abducting innocent people, exploiting vulnerabilities, and shattering lives for profit. The same man who had followed us, his eyes fixed with predatory intent, was now behind bars, facing justice for his heinous crimes. In the aftermath, Emma and I grappled with the weight of what had transpired. Our New Year's Eve celebration, a night that had started with joy and hope, had become a brush with something far more disturbing. We couldn't shake the haunting feeling that our chance encounter with evil had been averted by mere inches. The experience changed us forever, leaving a lasting mark on our sense of security. We became more vigilant, more aware of the shadows that lurked in crowded places. This happened about 6 years back. It was supposed to be the perfect Christmas getaway for our family. We booked a quaint hotel tucked away in the mountains, far from the chaos of holiday shopping and the demands of everyday life. Just my wife, our 2 kids, and me, enjoying some quality time surrounded by snow-covered pines and the promise of a serene holiday. The hotel looked absolutely beautiful. The exterior boasted a rustic charm with frosted windows and a wooden sign swinging softly in the chilly breeze. The lobby was cozy, a fireplace crackling in the corner, and the scent of pine needles wafting through the air. We checked in, our excitement mounting as we received the key to our lovely cabin. As we approached our home for the next few days, a picturesque cabin nestled at the edge of the woods, I couldn't help but marvel at the snow-covered landscape. It was like stepping into a winter wonderland far removed from the hustle and bustle of the city. The cabin itself was charming, with a roaring fireplace, cozy blankets, and a fully stocked kitchen. It was the perfect setting for our family Christmas. We unpacked, settled in, and watched as the sun dipped below the horizon. The first night was idyllic. We sat around the fireplace exchanging stories and sipping hot cocoa. The kids were bubbling with excitement, their laughter echoing through the cabin. It felt like we had found our own little piece of holiday magic. But as time went by, things started to get a little bit creepy. It started with the flickering of the lights. My wife shrugged it off as a minor inconvenience and maybe one of the quirks of a remote location. Then, the crackling fire projected creepy shadows on the walls that seemed to play tricks on our senses. The next morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside our cabin. I peered through the frost-covered window, expecting to see a fellow vacationer taking in the snowy scenery. But the path was empty, and the only tracks in the snow were ours from the previous night. During the day, the weird occurrences multiplied. Objects seemed to move on their own, a mug shifting on the table, and a book slid off the shelf onto the floor. Each time we exchanged puzzled glances, unable to find a rational explanation for these unsettling events. The kids, initially enchanted by the winter playground, grew uneasy. They spoke of strange whispers in the night, of shadows that seemed to linger just out of sight. We assured them it was their imagination, the product of a new environment playing tricks on their young minds. The unease reached its peak on Christmas Eve. We had planned a cozy dinner, a celebration of togetherness in our cozy cabin. As we sat around the table, the room plunged into darkness. The flickering fire, once a source of warmth, was casting eerie silhouettes on the walls once again. We reached for our cell phones to turn on the flashlights. Our voices hushed, as if afraid to disturb the unnatural stillness that had now settled over the cabin. The lights flickered back to life, but the air felt charged with an unspoken tension. My wife and I exchanged wary glances at each other, the festive atmosphere shattered by the sense that something was amiss. Our kids, who were just filled with the joy of Christmas Eve anticipation, now seemed subdued. Their eyes darted around the room, following unseen movements in the shadows. I tried to dismiss their unease and let them know that everything is okay. As we prepared to turn in for the night, the temperature in the cabin dropped. It wasn't a gradual cooling, but an abrupt, bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep through the walls. We huddled under blankets, the kids nestled close, their breath visible in the frosty air. The flickering fire struggled to ward off the encroaching cold. And then, the whispers began. Soft, indistinct voices that seemed to emerge from the very walls of the cabin. At first I thought it was the wind playing tricks, but the whispers persisted, growing a bit louder and more insistent. The kids clung to us, their faces pale in the dim light. My wife shot me a worried glance, her eyes reflecting the same fear that gripped my heart. The whispers took on a spectral quality, as if the very air held the hushed secrets of unseen entities. In a desperate attempt to dispel the tension, I suggested we go outside and enjoy the snow. Maybe the cold air would clear our minds, shake off the eerie atmosphere that had settled over the cabin. The kids hesitated, their reluctance evident, but they agreed. As we stepped outside, The cold was biting, the snow crunching beneath our boots. The forest that had seemed enchanting now felt like a labyrinth of shadows. We walked in silence, the only sound the soft patter of snowflakes falling from the branches above. And then, in the distance, we saw it, a figure standing among the trees. It was tall and indistinct, like a shadow given form. Panic surged through us as we stared at the silent figure, its presence sending shivers down our spines. In that frozen moment, the figure turned toward us. The moonlight revealed hollow eyes, a face obscured by darkness. We stood there, paralyzed as it stepped closer, its footsteps silent in the snow. Without uttering a word, we turned and ran back to the cabin, the whispers now a group of voices that seemed to chase us through the woods. We slammed the door shut, hoping to lock the cold and the whispers outside. The rest of the night was a blur of fear and confusion. We huddled together, the cabin feeling less like a refuge and more like a trap. The whispers persisted, haunting our every attempt to rationalize the inexplicable. When morning came, the atmosphere had changed. The cabin, once cozy and inviting, felt tainted. We packed our bags in haste, eager to leave behind the strange occurrences that had turned our Christmas getaway into a nightmarish ordeal. As we drove away from the hotel, the winter landscape unfolded behind us, the quaint charm replaced by the unsettling memories of our time there. The kids, now quiet and reflective, gazed out the window as the snow-covered pines disappeared from view. This Christmas vacation was definitely one for the books, and one that we hardly ever talk about. The entire experience still remains inexplicable and has no doubt left an inerasable mark on all of us. It was Christmas Eve and I found myself in the annual procrastinator's pilgrimage, last-minute shopping. I decided to stop at the nearest Target. My list was a mess of scribbles, and I hoped the shelves weren't as picked over as my patience. The store was a buzzing hive of activity. Parents frantically grabbing toys, couples arguing over which wrapping paper was more Christmassy, and a lone employee restocking shelves as if there wasn't an impending holiday apocalypse. I navigated through the chaos, cart squeaking and patience dwindling. As I browsed the endless rows of holiday-themed socks and cheap plastic ornaments, I noticed someone else, a guy, nondescript at first glance, weaving through the aisles like he was on a mission. I didn't think much of it at first. We were all on a mission after all. But as I turned down various aisles, I noticed he was always there, lingering just out of sight. Now, I've seen enough crime dramas to know when something feels off. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but I had a feeling I was being watched. It was like a sixth sense tingling at the base of my neck, urging me to pay attention. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a crowded store and coincidences happen. But every time I turned, he was there. Maybe it was my imagination, the stress of last-minute shopping playing tricks on me. I dismissed it, focused on finding the perfect gifts, and kept my eye on the clock. Time ticked away, and the store grew busier as the closing time drew nearer. The guy, however, remained a constant presence. He wasn't overly conspicuous, just a regular dude in jeans and a hoodie, blending into the sea of holiday shoppers. As I stood in the checkout line, the unease returned. I scanned the area, and there he was, a few registers down, pretending to browse through a magazine. I tried to ignore the unease I felt, but a nagging feeling told me otherwise. I paid, grabbed my bags, and headed for the exit. The guy followed suit, keeping a distance but maintaining the unsettling presence. My heart pounded, and I quickened my pace. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe it was the holiday stress, but I needed to shake off this fear. The parking lot was a maze of cars and shopping carts. I glanced over my shoulder, and there he was, still trailing behind. Panic flickered. I took a deep breath, convincing myself it was nothing to worry about. Maybe he parked nearby. Maybe he lived in the same neighborhood. As I approached my car, I fumbled for my keys. The parking lot was quiet, the holiday rush absorbed by the store walls. I felt a shiver down my spine as I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was a few yards away, eyes hidden by the hoodie. "Hey, are you following me?" I blurted out, a mix of fear and frustration in my voice. He stopped, hands in his pockets, a blank expression on his face. "No, I'm not following you. Just doing my shopping. I scoffed, my attempt at bravado failing. You've been in every aisle I went to. What's your deal? He shrugged, a nonchalant gesture that didn't match the intensity of the situation. Coincidence, I guess. It's a big store. The excuse hung in the air, thin and unconvincing. My instincts screamed at me to get out of there. I got in my car, locked the doors, and watched as he walked away. The parking lot felt quieter now, the holiday buzz replaced by an eerie stillness. I drove home, glancing in the rearview mirror every few seconds, half expecting to see his face in the back seat. I made it home without incident, the relief evident as I locked the door behind me. The paranoia lingered as I wrapped gifts and decorated the tree. I double-checked the locks, pulled the curtains tight, and avoided looking out the window. The guy at Target might have been harmless, but the sense of being watched stayed with me. As I settled into bed, exhaustion mingling with lingering anxiety, I just couldn't get his face out of my mind. My heart skipped a beat as I froze, wondering what would have happened if I didn't muster the courage to confront him. I spent most of the night tossing and turning, haunted by the feeling of being watched. Christmas morning had arrived, and the sun seemed to bathe the world in a gentle light. The presents under the tree seemed both a reward for surviving the night and a reminder of the unexpected ordeal I had last night shopping. In the days that followed, I took precautions, checking my surroundings, varying my routines, and always trusting my instincts. The guy from Target remained a mystery, his presence a lingering ghost in the back of my mind. Thanks for watching. Don't miss out on more spine-chilling tales. Subscribe now for weekly scares. Hit that red button and join our journey into the unknown.